COVID inquiry is ongoing until they think 2026, and that is for both the UK COVID inquiry and the Scottish COVID inquiry. Now, the modules that we've been most interested in together have been Module 3 around health and Module 6, which was the care sector, and that module ended on the 31st of July. And at Together we held an event to mark the day, and we are planning more events in the autumn where we will be dissecting what was said during the COVID inquiry Module 6 hearings, what was not said, and what was covered up. And we will be looking into various areas, whether that is remote medicine, the impact that had on the vulnerable and the elderly, whether it's the introduction of protocols such as NG163 and later NG191, if this was around frailty scales, which were also discriminatory. So what we will be looking at is all the discriminatory policies that were introduced during COVID, and the government's COVID response. Not just the government, it's institutions, so the NHS and social care. But obviously, social care is mainly private these days. I mean, it's over 90%. I think it's like something like 96% is in private hands, I believe. Only 4%, I think, is in local authority hands. And of course, local authorities are held over a barrel by these care companies. But that's another question. But what was interesting during the Module 6 hearings is that, like in the Scottish COVID inquiry, the narrative was kind of controlled. We believe there are certain words that people were not able to say. Now, I cannot prove that for the UK COVID inquiry, but it's interesting that euthanasia was mentioned in written statements to the COVID inquiry, UK Module 6 hearings, but not mentioned in the hearings themselves. And we know for a fact in the Scottish COVID inquiry, and one of the people who did a video, I think, some while ago with Together, Bill Jolly, whose father died on an end-of-life protocol in Scotland. He was told explicitly, because he had mentioned the word euthanasia in his statement, that he was not allowed to mention that word. So I should imagine the same kind of restrictions are there in the COVID inquiry, UK COVID inquiry. And it's quite interesting that one of the campaigners did a blog the other day. I'm not going to mention her name, but one of the campaigners who was a core participant at the Module 6 module confirmed in her blog post that they were told what they could and couldn't say. So I think that is proof enough. And the thing is, the COVID inquiry invited campaigners who were not core participants to submit evidence. And I wrote a report that informed the final submission of the People's Care Watchdog, who did not have core participant status, but they had been given permission to, they had been invited rather, to submit evidence on behalf of their group. And like Unlock Care Homes, which I founded during lockdown to campaign against the visiting restrictions, as People's Care Watchdog did, we are both very, very concerned about end-of-life protocol abuses during the COVID period. Now, it's a real problem trying to raise this issue, because what we get is, oh, these people were dying anyway. But we know from the evidence that was spoken during the Module 6 hearings that people were told, care managers were told when they called up for antibiotics, they were told, well, send the end-of-life pack. Or when they called up 111 care managers or families called up 111, it was send the end-of-life pack. So we know that people were being denied antibiotics during the period. It was assumed that because they were ill that they had COVID, when it could have been well-being that they had a bacterial infection from which they would have benefited from antibiotics and steroids, for example. And we know that many people were not getting into hospital. There were do not admit orders effectively, meaning that people who were from care homes would not be admitted to hospital. They also would not get respiratory help in the care home. And we have to also remember that over 70% of care homes, and that includes nursing homes, over 70% do not have nurses on site. So when they removed GPs from care homes, or GPs were not going into care homes, and they introduced remote medicine, this meant that people were being diagnosed over the phone. How you can diagnose a bacterial infection over the phone or a viral infection, I don't know. And this meant that people were not getting the treatment they needed. So all these things did come out in the inquiry, both the Scottish inquiry and the UK COVID inquiry. However, there's a lot that was covered up. So as I was saying, the report that I wrote, which informed the People's Care Watchdog report submission, has not been published. And it should have been published before the hearings, or at least during the hearings. That will not now be scrutinised by those leading the inquiry. It's almost like an afterthought. And in that, we reveal so much evidence of the harms of these policies. It's quite interesting that a senior civil servant who was seconded to the Department of Health and Social Care in April 2020, when he was reporting on, I think it was the 30th of June, to the COVID inquiry, in his witness statement, he said that it was the greatest, something words the effect of, this was the greatest catastrophic policy error of a generation, and he also said that it was generational slaughter what happened in care homes, and that it was policy that killed so many tens of thousands of elderly and vulnerable people. However, his take on that is this was because of the discharge from hospital orders. And that obviously had a huge impact because COVID did go like wildfire through the care homes. However, if those people had received on-site care, if they'd been taken to hospital, if they had been treated, many of them would have survived. But our greatest concern is the end-of-life protocols which were brought in during that time, which basically, if somebody had COVID and they had comorbidities and they were over a certain age and they had a DNAR in place, then their continued treatment was unlikely and they would be put on an end-of-life pathway. And this happened to thousands and thousands of elderly and vulnerable care home residents. So the COVID inquiry continues and will continue, as I said, until 2026. We will keep you posted of any updates. One final thing, on the closing day, the KC for COVID bereaved families gave a damning assessment, a summary of the policy failings. However, for her and the group that she is organising, the takeaway is we didn't lock down soon enough, we didn't lock down hard enough, and this is why so many people's lives were lost. And I would say quite the opposite. The reason we lost so many lives was because of lockdown. We locked people up, we locked their families out, we locked the doctors away from giving them the care they needed, and we failed them on every single level. It must never, ever happen again. And we hope that you will keep up to date with us, and that if you're in London in the autumn, we'll keep you posted on the dates. We will have an event, hopefully a live event, and after that there will be a series of online debates where we'll be discussing many of the issues that I brought up in my report. And my report now is being rewritten, and that will be published on the Together website, and that will go into all the catastrophic policy errors that were introduced during COVID. A terrible, terrible response that killed so many people. So keep up to date with us and get in touch if you'd like to get more involved. Thank you.